Good morning, my name is Pastor Nick, and I'm so glad that you're joining us for Church Online. Don't forget to download the Grace Church app and use the response card to communicate with us. Today is the final week in our series, Do It Again. We are so excited about what God is going to do next in the life of our church. Thank you so much for making all of this possible by your giving. You can always give online or text Grace Church Woo to 77977.
78 years. A few farmers and small-town friends founded Grace Church in 1939. Oh, it wasn't called that. First Brethren Church. Names have changed, but missions remained. 78 years in the making, it's definitely a story worth telling in Wayne County. But when I survey the events where God worked, God moved, God spoke, all I want to say is, do it again, God, do it again in our midst. We refuse to believe the best was in the past, that we passed by the climax of an extraordinary story like it's over. Because we know you're the grand storyteller, weaving us into your victory if we go your way. So we go your way and do whatever you say, because we see a day when you'll blow us away with the future you alone can comprehend. Do it again, Jesus. We dream of seeing lives restored. Our eyes are on you, our risen Lord. Lord, do it again.
Well, good morning. Oh, come on, good morning. Man, I hope that you're thrilled to be at church, because today is a very big day here at Grace Church. We are celebrating baptism, right? We just heard about it. And baptism is when people go public with what God has done in their heart, the life change that they've experienced. There's nothing better to me than hearing what God has done in someone's heart. And so we're excited to make sure to be here today at 3 o'clock. Bring your own chair. Okay, some of you will be sitting on the ground. Bring your own chair. Be here for that. It's going to be great. And so while we were thinking about baptism, and I was thinking about baptism this week, I thought, man, what would be really cool to take baptism to the next level? And I started thinking about water, and I thought, what if we could baptize people like this? What if we would build a water slide, and they would have to go down this 3 times, because we're brethren. And we'd have to go down this 3 times and go under the water. You know, wouldn't that be unbelievable? How many people want to be baptized then, right? It would just be incredible, right? But no, I'm just kidding. We wouldn't do that. But that water slide is actually from Atlantis, the hotel in the Nassau, Bahamas, right? They have this huge water park, and we saw a documentary on this recently, and they have, this slide is 120 feet in the air, and it drops you straight down. And it's an incredible experience. And so for some of you, when you think of that, you're like, no way would I ever do that, right? You're not a risk taker. And others of you get really excited about the thrill of that possibility. And so as we were learning more about this hotel and this water park, we discovered that Pastor Randy has actually been there. And I got a picture of him going down the slide, right? And I thought, hey, that's perfect, man. Way to go, Randy. Be careful what you post to Facebook. I will use it, right? But no, really. Then we discovered that there's other slides there. The one that we just saw, it goes down and it goes under the water in this glass case that's 1 inch thick of glass, and you swim with the sharks. But then there's another one where you go really slow, and you're just kind of, look at that guy's face. No way do you have that kind of face if a shark is 1 inch away from your face, right? But who would ever want to have that kind of an experience, right? That would be a complete risk. And for some of us, no, we would never want to do that. Others of you are like, hey, that sounds kind of cool. Tells you where you're at with risk. And risk is the word of the day. Write that down if you're a note taker. Risk. That's right up front what we're talking about. We finished up our series, Do It Again, this morning. We're talking about how God, for nearly 80 years, has been moving in our church. And we've seen his faithfulness. And if we're going to see him do it again in we want to see him start by doing it again in me, right? And so today, as we wrap up, we're going to talk about how to take the next steps of faith. What's next for Grace Church? And it's going to involve some risk, right? Because faith always involves risk. So open up your Bibles to the book of Matthew, chapter 25. We're going to look at a story that Jesus told, a parable that he told, that's right in the middle of Matthew chapter 25, verses 14 to 30. Matthew 25, 14 to 30. When you think about risk, it probably draws you back to earlier in your life, because it's true that the younger we are, the more risks we're okay taking, and the more risks that we like to take. And as we kind of age and get older, we may take less and less risks, and we're not all that excited about risks. And we even know that there's such a thing as risk aversion, where there are some people who are wired by God that they're going to go after the most secure and safe outcome they can always go for, right? Because they don't want to risk it all. And we live in a culture that tries to avoid risk at all cost. We don't want to have any risk. We'll do thrills, but not real risk. We don't want to lose anything, and we want to be safe and secure, and so we don't really like risk. But if we're ever faced with a decision where we might have to take a risk, we like to be prepared. That's our culture. And so we approach any risk that might be worth it, kind of like this guy, right? You got to be ready. Right? You got to have the helmet on and be all safe in order to take a risk. It's kind of in our DNA. But we all do face decisions of risk. Things like finances. When you think of risk, you think of investment risk, and there's high-risk investment and low-risk investment, and what you do with your money can be a risk. But there's a lot of other risks. We can have relational risks, right? Like, should I have the conversation with them? Should I confront the issue with her? Should we have that? That's taking a risk. Should I take the job, or should I move, or should I stay, or should I leave, or should I go? All of these different things involve risk. And we don't like risk. But risk is related to faith. They are in the same family. Faith includes an element of risk. And God has given everyone life. And He has an expectation of how we spend it. He doesn't want you to waste your life. But if you're going to spend your life how God expects you to spend your life and how He's wired you to spend your life so that you get the best life, it's going to require some risk. Faith, if you're going to define it, is simply trusting God. And the reason it's risky is because it's trusting God more than yourself. You're not going to control all the outcomes anymore. You're going to trust that He is out for your best, that His way is always better than your way, and you're going to put all of your confidence with Him. The Bible tells us in the book of Hebrews that it is absolutely impossible to please God without faith. Let me translate that for you. It's absolutely impossible to please God without risk. Risk is required if you're going to please God. And there's a fine line between risking it and having faith and being a fool and doing something silly, right? And I'm not equating a faith with some sort of water slide. And trusting God isn't a blind leap because He is a God who has a track record. And as a church, we've seen it for nearly 80 years. He's been faithful. He still is faithful. And tomorrow, if we wake up, He'll still be faithful. So we trust God, not blindly, but based upon what He's done for us, that He's a good God, that He loves us, that He gives us graciously to us. But it does require some faith. And so toward the end of Matthew's gospel, in Matthew chapter 25, Jesus, in a couple chapters here in Matthew's gospel, is giving kind of His final words to His followers before He leaves. He's like, hey, I'm going to go away and then I'm going to come back. But while you wait, here's what I expect you to do while you wait. And in our story today, there are 4 main characters. 3 of them are servants, and they represent us. 1 is the master, represents Jesus. And so Jesus kicks off this story, and the master gives his servants an opportunity. Let's jump in verse 14. It says, again, it will be like a man going on a journey. And he calls all of his servants, and he entrusts his wealth to them. So servant or the master is going to go away. He gets the servants around and says, hey, I got something for you. To one of his servants, he gave 5 bags of gold. To another 2 bags. To another 1 bag, each according to his ability. And then he went on his journey. And so let me set this up for you. And maybe in your translation of the Bible that you're holding or reading, you might see the word talent there. A bag of gold is synonymous with a talent. A talent is about 15 to 20 years of amassed income, okay? So if you were to do all the math from this day until today, each bag of gold or each talent would be worth right around $1 million. This is a great opportunity this master is giving his servants. He's saying, hey, listen, to one of you I'm giving 5 million, 2 million, and 1 million. Here you go. Now, I have 3 kids. I don't know if they're my servants, but I have 3 kids, right? And I thought if I went away on a vacation and I said, hey, listen, kids, to one of you I'm going to give all of our savings. To the other one, I'm going to give you just some spending money. And to the last one, I'm going to give you our debit card and the PIN number for it, okay? And then I would go away. I'd be a fool. If I walked back into my house, I would see a bunch of Legos, a bunch of Barbies, a bunch of Nerf guns, and a ton of empty ice cream containers and maybe a nickel on the table, right? They would spend it all. It'd be crazy. That's the kind of opportunity that the master's giving these servants in this story. And at face value, it looks a little unfair, doesn't it? Why 5, 3, or 5, 2, and 1? Why does one person get more than the other person? And isn't that kind of unfair? Well, it reveals something about the master. It reveals something about God. While we like to compare how much everybody has, he doesn't care. Because he gives us exactly what we need. And he knows our abilities and our capabilities, and he knows where our full potential is, and he wants all of us to reach our full potential. And so let's see what these guys do with these bags of gold. Look at verse 16. It says, the man who received 5, he went at once and put his money to work, and he gained 5 more bags. Okay. And then there's the second guy, the one with 2 bags, he gained 2 more. Okay, so the first one had 5, he now has 10. Second one had 2, he now has 4. We're doing math today, right? But the man who had received 1 bag went off, dug a hole in the ground, and hid his master's money. Whoa, totally different experience here. The first 2, they see the opportunity, they take the risk, they invest the money. Not the third guy. Instead, he decides to play it safe. He buries it in the backyard and goes on with life. Now, depending upon your personality, you kind of like lean one way or the other in this story. You either lean towards the risk-taking kind of person or the play-it-safe kind of person, right? But God's really clear in this story what he expects. And so these guys go, they take the risk or they don't. That's their opportunity. But when the master comes back from the journey, we see some accountability. Look what happens in verse 19. After a long time, the master of those servants returned and settled accounts with them. The man who had received 5 bags of gold brought the other 5. And the master said, he said, you entrusted me with 5 bags of gold. See, I've gained 5 more. The master replied, well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful with a few things. I'll put you in charge of many things. Come and share my happiness. Well done, man. You took the 5 and you doubled it. That's exactly what I was after. Now, when this guy says, hey, I gained 5 more, there's something significant there. It means that he worked for it. This guy didn't just go out and get lucky and go to Vegas, roll the dice, and walk in with double his money. He set up a business, and he invested. And we don't know from the story. It's not like it maybe went perfectly the whole time. Maybe he struggled at first, and maybe he lost some of it, but he gained it all back. And he invested, right? He did something with what the master gave him, and he ended up doubling it. He had to be completely confident in what his master wanted him to do. So that's what the first guy did. He doubled it. And the master was pleased when he came back. Second guy, the man with 2 bags of gold, also came. Master, he said, you entrusted me with 2 bags of gold. See, I have gained 2 more. The master was thrilled. Well done, good and faithful servant. You've been faithful with a few things. I'll put you in charge of many things. Come, let's rejoice. Share in my happiness. Same exact experience. He's pleased with the first servant. He's pleased with the second servant. Very pleased. Yet, the second guy didn't bring 10. The first guy brought 10. The second guy only brought 4. And in our world, even when we see people make a difference, we tend to really compare it. We compare it a lot. Well, he had 5 and he had 2, but he ended up with 10 and he ended up with 4, so there's a winner and a loser. This is very interesting that this story has 3 people in it, and Jesus separates out the first 2 from the last one. He goes, listen, it isn't about how much you've been given, and it isn't about how much you bring back. It's about what you do with it. The master is so much more concerned with the investment than the talent. And yet our eyes in this world are so focused on the talent, not Jesus. No way. So how about the third guy? Well, the third man, the man who got 1 bag,
He came and he said, now I want you to picture this. The next time you go into your annual review and things didn't go as quite like you planned that year, you just be like, hey, listen, it's your fault. Okay, you tell your boss that, see how that goes, right? He goes, listen, I knew you were a hard guy. You're a hard man, right? Harvesting where you have not sown and gathering where you have not gathered seeds. So he's going to be transparent. He's like, I was absolutely afraid. I was afraid. I acted out of fear, not faith. And I went out and I hid the gold in the ground. See? Here's what you gave me. Maybe they doubled it, God, but I give you back exactly what you gave me, and I didn't risk anything. And I think he thought God would be pleased, that his master would be thrilled. So what's the master say? You wicked and lazy servant. Now, that's pretty harsh, isn't it? He didn't take the risk. He played it safe. And the first thing the master says is, you wicked and lazy servant. Imagine walking around with that kind of business card. Like, hey, my name is Nick. I'm a wicked and lazy servant, right? No. He goes, you knew that I harvest where I have not sown and I gather where I have not scattered. Then you should have at least taken the money to the bank and got me some interest. And it gets harder. The accountability gets worse. So take the bag from this guy, give it to the one that has 10, because clearly this guy doesn't know what to do with it. For whoever has will be given more, and they will have an abundance. And whoever does not have, even what they have, will be taken from them. Look at verse 30. This is mean. Seems like it. And throw that worthless servant out. Whoa. Into the darkness, where there'll be weeping and gnashing of teeth. The master's not pleased at all with what the servant's done. He gave him stuff to invest. He played it safe. He didn't take the risk. He acted out of fear. He forgot faith. And he gave back to the master exactly what he was given. And the master was not pleased. Ouch. It kind of leads us right to the point of this story. It's the point for us today. What God has entrusted, he expects will be invested. Let me say that again. What God has entrusted, he expects will be invested. And God has entrusted us with our life, with our abilities, with our experiences, with our personality, with our skills, with our resources, with our time. And he expects us to take all of that and invest it for his kingdom. He wants you and me today to accept the risk and not act in fear, but to respond in faith and be confident about it because of who he is, not who we are. And if he's going to do it again in we, it's going to start by doing it again in me, right there. Everybody listening to this message, you have a bag of gold from God. It's called your life. And while you wait for our master to return, and while you wait for your life to be lived, take this bag and do something with it. All of us have to do that. And as we do that individually, it has an effect on us corporately. See, God expects believers and those who are followers of Christ to act in faith, but he also expects his church collectively to do that. And for nearly 80 years, our church has done that. You can see the stories of people who have moved out in faith, people that have, offered the mortgage of their homes to pay for the movement of God in this church. And over the years, you can see the themes of his faithfulness as we have served and loved our community and shared the hope of Jesus Christ. We've been committed to the Word of God since the very beginning. We're committed to the mission of God in the world. We're committed to the next generation to see them carry the Word of God and the mission forward. That's been our story for nearly 80 years, and I'm here to tell you that that is going to change. It's only going to increase. Our commitment to his Word is only going to increase. Our commitment to the next generation is only going to increase. Our commitment to his mission is only going to increase. But what's it really going to look like now? Hey, listen, we're not a perfect church. If you're under any delusional thought that we are, let me set that straight. But we are the church that we are today by God's grace and for his glory. And as we age as a church, we have to be careful. We have to guard against risk aversion. We have to guard against
faith aversion. And the only way we can guard against that together collectively is if we guard against it personally. And so, what does the next chapter of Grace Church look like? That's what I want to spend our time talking about this morning, with that parable of Jesus driving us forward. This summer, we talked about influencers and how God wants us to be an influencer and how our culture has changed consistently all around us. It's shifted dramatically. And listen, our message will remain the same, but our methods are constantly going to be changed. You can look at that. For 80 years, we've been doing that. And it's hard because some of the things that have been so effective to get us where we are here today, they're going to have to be tweaked, some of them, to get us where we need to go. And where do we need to go? We need to be faithful. We need to accept risk. Every generation has to figure out how to reach its own generation. And we're going to have to learn to make some purposeful change that's inevitable and necessary in order to move forward. We're going to have to be collectively risk takers together. I need you, we all need everyone here to go all in and be risk takers for the kingdom of God. And as we watch and as we wait for Jesus to return, we have this incredible opportunity that's been handed to us. And there will come accountability with the opportunity. And so, with a few minutes that we have left, I want to kind of maybe paint a little bit of a picture for you of what's coming next. And I want to do that painting around two key words. And I would ask all of you write these words down, to pray about them, to think about them, to ask God how you can be involved, okay? Two words that'll help paint the picture of where we're going. First word is this: multiplication. Multiplication. God expects us to multiply. An investment of what he's given us is a multiplication. Those guys multiplied, the first two servants multiplied what they had. While I was in Chicago and we were at the Museum of Science and Industry, our kids loved that experience. And one of the things at the Museum of Science and Industry that they've had historically is this huge wall. It's got 64 checkers on it. It's a checkerboard wall. And in the bottom left corner, there's 1 grain of wheat. And there's this huge question over the top. It says, if you doubled the amount of wheat as you move from square to square, how much would you have when you reach the 64th square? Would it be a carload? Would it be a train load? How much would it be? Starting with 1, multiplying by 64 squares. The answer is you'd have enough to cover the entire country of India 6 feet. That's the power of multiplication. Jesus is teaching us in this story that faithfulness to God includes multiplying what he's given to us. But for us to do that, we're going to have to individually and collectively enlarge our vision for what we've been given. And to do that, at times we're going to take some calculated risks. To multiply our influence, we're going to have to be risk takers together. So let me unpack a little bit of what that could look like in the future. One of the ways we want to multiply our influence and enlarge our reach is to make some more space at our most invitable hour. For those of you that are in this room right now watching, you kind of see that this room is kind of full this morning. There's not a ton more space. And so we want to make room at the 10:15 hour for more people. And the way we're going to do that is launch a new venue early in 2018. We're going to launch it in the Student Ministry Center at 10:15. So that we can make some room for more people and expand our vision and expand our reach here in Wayne County. And what we're going to learn while we do that is we're going to learn some things on how to maybe have a new site, to expand our reach even beyond just Wayne County, maybe even regionally. And we are prayerfully investigating and asking God what he might have for us to multiply our influence even beyond just locally, but regionally, into new communities and new campuses and new sites. And if we're going to launch a new venue and we're going to maybe, Lord willing, be led to launch a new site one day, guess what? We're going to need more and new leaders and servants. We're going to need more people. We're all going to have to adopt a multiplication mindset where we think about, hey, I need to get invested and get involved in this, and I need to reproduce who I am, and I need to bring people along and invite them to join. I need to be inviting people to church. I need to be inviting people to kind of step next to me as I serve and as I lead. That's one of the reasons we brought the Global Leadership Summit here to Grace Church because we wanted to keep the leadership development discussion going and going and going. It's one of the reasons we're launching a grassroots effort, a leadership pipeline to develop more and more leaders for the kingdom. And you're like, so that's what it's about? It's about a new venue, a new site, new leaders? No. Listen, the reason we do any of that, the reason that we do all of it, is so that we can multiply the influence of Jesus Christ in the lives of people. We want to see more people experience the hope and transformation of Christ. I want to hear more life change stories like this one that you're going to hear this afternoon at baptism. Listen to this. Before I went to Grace, and before I truly believed in God, I always thought, I'm only a kid. I cannot make a difference in this world. My life was without purpose. My mom died a year before I accepted Christ into my life. Now, my favorite day of the week is Sunday because I get to go to church. I love God. I will say it 1,000,000 times. I love God. I want to see that multiplied over and over and over in the hearts and lives of people. That's a multiplication mindset. We have to multiply what He's given us. We've been handed this bag. We've been handed this talent. We need to do what these first two servants did. They immediately left and went and invested. So can I ask you a question? Who would miss out if you chose to not multiply? Who's going to miss out? Who's not going to get the opportunity to have that kind of a story if you don't take the risk? Who wouldn't get to hear the message if we didn't take the risk together? First word is multiplication. To form a multiplication, the second word is movement. Movement. Multiplication, movement. We'll call it the M&M vision, right? This is a call for our church to go back to the beginning of the church. In the book of Acts, the church started not as a service, not as a building, not as a nonprofit. It didn't start with staff and volunteers and boards and committees, I can tell you that. It started as a movement of God. And it started as a movement of God in people's lives. And when you say movement, everybody kind of, well, people gather all over the place in the world in the name of a movement of whatever they want to move for. We're not interested so much in starting a movement as we are in joining the movement of God. That's the genesis behind things like the Fort Wayne County movement. That's why we started that, because we believe that every person is created in the image of God and has equal value and worth, and that God is for people. And for too long, the church has been telling people that they're against them. God is not against people. His message is good news. Stop changing that. God is for you. He loves you. If God was out to get you, He'd already have gotten you. He's not out to get you. He's out to show you His love and His grace and His mercy through His Son, Jesus' death. Listen, you have offended God because you've sinned, and that's created a distance between you and God. But He is so much for you that He gave His only Son when He didn't have to, because He loves you. He is for you. That's what it's about. And so we want to take opportunities to meet needs, to open people's hearts to that message. That's why we're doing the shoe drive. And if you haven't gone to the table, you should go to the table today. And we want to multiply those efforts in the Fort Wayne County movement. Listen, I can see the day, whereas we're multiplying what God has given us and we join the movement of what He's doing, that we're going to see added dimensions to the Fort Wayne County movement. I can see new locations of the Fort Wayne County movement. I can see new opportunities that arise out of the Fort Wayne County movement, because we're meeting needs that the community has said they have. Saved people serve people, and it starts by loving and serving our neighbor. But it doesn't stop there. It keeps going because it's a movement, and movements move. And our vision isn't just for a local or regional. It extends to the entire world. We want to be strategic partners with what God is doing in the most effective way in the world. And I don't have enough time today to go into all of the opportunities that we have in the world, but this church is involved in many different opportunities in the world. And so I want to invite you to something where you're going to hear more about this. This is a significant date. It's a few weeks out, but I want you to know about it. On September the 20th in the Student Ministry Center, we're going to host another Coffee with the Pastors. Now, these coffees in the past have been ways for us to continue to communicate and hash out the vision together, and we're going to continue to use those in the days ahead. And on September 20th, when you come, you're going to hear what Grace is doing in the world. You're going to hear our strategy for the world. And then we're going to focus in on Southeast Asia and our opportunity with our orphan homes. If you're new to Grace, you should know that we sponsor 3 orphan homes in Southeast Asia. We sponsor other opportunities as well with orphans, but 3 specifically in Southeast Asia, we have sponsors for. And what started as a responsibility to rescue children, they've now gotten older, and it's turned into an opportunity to change a country. And the Asia's Hope director, the ones that lead the homes, Dr. John McCullum, will be on site with us that night. And he's going to share how we can partner with them to capitalize on this opportunity. He's going to show us new ways that we can all get involved in what God is doing. You do not want to miss that Coffee with the Pastors on September 20th. It's a part of what God is doing in the world. It's a movement in our county. It's a movement in our region. It's a movement in the world. But it's a movement in your heart. Joining the movement of God in the world starts by allowing God to have free movement in your life. It's to be led by God to take your next steps of faith. Some of you may have been around Grace for a while now, and you've been hearing about baptism, and you've become a follower of Christ. But you've never gone public and just told people what Jesus has done in your heart. And you know there's a baptism this afternoon, and for whatever reason you didn't get your stuff in, it's not too late. This morning when we wrap up our time, you can come to the front of any venue or go to the Next Steps kiosk and say, hey, it's time. I need to respond by faith. The first 2 servants, it says in that story, immediately responded to the master. Are you willing to take your risk and to go out and have steps of faith, to obey exactly what the master says immediately? Can I ask you this morning, is that how quick you respond to God? When he says it, you do it? Does his Spirit have free reign to move in your heart and life? Because he's not going to do it again in my heart until I give him that access to move freely and for me to respond right away. Because if he's going to do it again in we, it's to start by doing it again in me. It's by me taking a risk and me giving him access and all of us doing that together. Those 2 words, multiplication and movement, they kind of paint a picture of the next chapter of what we believe God is going to do here at Grace Church. And I'll tell you what, if we would begin to personalize these and we would begin to allow ourselves to take the risk and to multiply what God has given us individually, and we would join the movement and do what he calls us to do right away and take steps of faith, I think this will happen. I think that we could ignite a multiplication movement that would impact Wayne County, our region, and the entire world with the message of Jesus Christ. Listen, if we're going to wrap up this series, we got to think about what we've been talking about with Do It Again. If you haven't listened to all these messages, go back and listen to them again. For God to do it again, it starts with me worshiping Jesus. And when we put Jesus first, everything else falls into place. And then we commit to each other. That connection takes commitment, right? And then we practice generosity. And we give back what it all belongs to him anyway. And then we're united by a shared vision. Listen, people that worship Jesus, committed to each other, practice generosity, and are united by a vision, they're going to change the world. And I think God's going to blow our minds with what he can do. And so today, I want to invite you to jump in. I want to invite you to join what God is already doing in and through Grace Church. I want to invite you to go all in. Are you all in? Maybe. Are you all in? Are you ready to go all in? Let me explain what all in means. All in means this. that you're committed to Jesus as your leader, Grace Church as your family, and advancing the vision as your work. Is that you? Are you all in? That Jesus is the leader and director of your life? Are you all in that the people next to you matter? You're connected to these people? Are you all in being generous with your time, your treasure, and your talent? Are you all in on taking the risk? It is a risk. It is. And it's the only way to please God, is to take the risk. So here's what I want to do with the couple minutes we have left. I want to take a survey, and I need everyone's help. Even if you don't normally do this, I'm asking you today to do this. I want everybody to find this card. It's inside your program when you walked in. If you're using the app, just flip over to the response section. And then I want you to do a second thing. I just want you to bow your head. I want you to spend just a couple seconds with God here, examining your heart. What if we invited Him to have free reign in our lives today? To set our hearts on fire after Him? What would that look like for you? Are you all in? Maybe for some of you, you're not all in because you can't truly say that Jesus is the leader of your life. And when I was talking about the fact that He is for you and He loves you, maybe that kind of just tugged on your heart. And you would say, I'm not so sure that I've ever responded to His message of good news. I want to give you a chance to do that right here where you are. To just silently say to God something like this: God, thank you for loving me. I know I've blown it by sinning. I receive your forgiveness through Jesus' death in my place. I give you total control of my life. Have the freedom to lead me anywhere. Today, God, I'm all in. If you prayed something like that in your heart silently between you and God right now, if those words you were drawn to by His Spirit, I would like to know. And you can just fill out on that response section. Just say, all in with Jesus. Just write that, all in with Jesus. It's the greatest decision you could ever make. And I'm telling you, if you made that decision this morning, there is an opportunity to go public with it. And it's a risk, and it's a step of faith, and it's this afternoon at 3. We got to know about it. It's not too late. As soon as your service ends, you can come forward, talk to somebody, say, I just went all in with Jesus. And I got to let somebody know about it. And if you've already gone all in with Jesus, the other two are for you. Are you all in with Grace Church as your family? And are you all in with advancing the vision as your work? Are you ready to go all in? Because listen, we can't do this without you. We need everybody on the same page. And if you're ready to go all in with this church and this vision, would you just write that on the card? Say, all in. All in. And you're committing to pray over those two words, multiplication and movement. God, thank you for the truth today. God, we want to be people that go all in. God, whatever it is that might be holding us back from taking the risk, would you remove that for us? Would you allow us to take our steps of faith, to live as though you're our leader? God, as a church, if we would do that individually, you would just stir a movement in here that couldn't be stopped, that no one could give any credit to. They wouldn't credit the pastor. They would give credit to God, because He's clearly moving. God, you have created us and wired us to be a part of something greater than just what we've been experiencing. God, may we be people that not waste our lives. We would go all in. We would take the risk. And in your name and for your glory, would make the investment. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thanks again for joining us this morning. You know, that question, are you ready to go all in, is for you. I hope you're ready to take your next step. Make sure to join us next week. We're kicking off a brand new series called Faith That Works. It's going to be a study from the book of James. And listen, it's impossible to stay the same when you study the book of James. You're always welcome to join us here in person on Sundays at 9, 10:15, or 11:30. We're going to be right back here, same time, same place next week. Hope you have a wonderful, wonderful week.